It seems some of Trump's biggest fans are starting to have questions. Why hasn't Trump done X, Y, or Z on their preferred, most interesting to them issues? Leading even to Tom Fitton, who is a big MAGA guy, suing the Trump administration. I'll play the video where he explains that here in a second, and then we'll get to Steve Bannon, the extreme MAGA propagandist, saying that the deep state is winning. I'm the deep state, has the upper hand, which is an exciting turn of events. It doesn't feel like the deep state has the upper hand, but all right, whatever that means. So Judicial Watch is this guy's thing, and he says that Judicial Watch sues Justice Department for Epstein client list. I will come back to, in this segment, the question of if Biden's attorney general had come out and said, I had on my desk, I had the Epstein files, and what I found was something else, and we're going to release them, and then didn't release any new information, really? What would they be saying about Biden, and what conspiracies would they be telling? But it's never, like we talked about in the Tucker segment, Trump's fault, or some of them are kind of blaming Bondi, but it's never Trump's fault. It's always the deep state's fault for actions that are completely under the control of Trump. Here's Tom Fitton flexing his muscles.
Hey everyone, Judicial Watch just sued for the Epstein records. We want the lists, the client lists, pretty much any document the Justice Department or the FBI have about this scandal.
Okay, yes, you have biceps. Good job. I'm serious. I'm genuinely happy for you. That's awesome, and it looks like you work hard, but you don't have to put them in the camera that aggressively.
Or the FBI have about this scandal. I know records have been turned over, but we asked for the records, and we've been getting the runaround from both the Justice Department and the FBI. So the best way to ensure all the records are turned over is to sue in federal court, and that's where we are now. We want to know what records there are, if there are any that we can't have, why not, where do they search for the records, all that basic information. And it's well past time for the American people to get the full truth about this big scandal.
Mm-hmm. And I think the Epstein files are over there. Yeah. No, but I mean, they were thinking Trump was going to go expose the deep state, and then he didn't. Now, there's two options. Maybe the deep state isn't what you thought it was. No, they're not going to agree to that. So instead, it has to be that they're doing deep state jujitsu to prevent Trump from releasing this. Laura Loomer said, is anyone ever going to go to jail? Or are we going to be subjected to more painful Fox News sound bites? That one, Laura, I'm very disappointed. We're approaching 100 days of the new administration. Nobody's gone to jail yet. That's not true, but she means like the deep state assets or whatever. Where's the accountability for crimes committed by bureaucrats? Trump's president now. Trump's president. All of his loyalists are in all the big positions of power. Have you ever considered one time, like half of a time, that maybe your conclusions are faulty? Because now this is Trump's second term, and still the proof of the conspiracies you said he was going to be able to expose haven't come out. Now, I'm not talking about Epstein. We all know that a lot of stuff has been proven about what Epstein, the horrific, disgusting stuff he did, and why he was in prison before dying in that little situation. But what about the reason we didn't know more was because deep staters were, and if you don't know what, I don't even know how to define how the people who are not, everyone who's not MAGA, who's working in coordination to stop MAGA is essentially the definition I would go off of. And maybe your conclusion's faulty. Maybe that thing doesn't exist, and maybe Trump is either not wanting to release the Epstein files for some reason, or they don't contain what we thought they could, or whatever. But at some point, you have to blame Trump and not the deep state, I guess is my point here. Then Fitton goes on Bannon's show to say this.
Well, we sued under the FOIA for the Epstein records. They were supposed to be released. There was a great controversy in the process of the release initially by Pam Bondi's team. And we're like, what's going on here? Where are the records? What records generally are out there? What are being withheld? Where are you looking? What happened with this initial release? Was there obstruction? Who did it?
Yeah, again, I just want to say to everyone, I don't think there's the list that people think. Like, we can get information about who was on flight logs, but that doesn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt anything. And we can get information about who was besties with Epstein, like Trump. We can get information about these things, but like the idea that on some desk somewhere, there's just a list that lays out, here's the exact crimes, here's the proof, and here's all the powerful people who engaged in them, and here's the tapes or whatever. Maybe that doesn't exist because, frankly, the government's hella leaky, and I feel like it would have leaked by now if that were the case. But then Steve Bannon here, this comes from some right-wing outlet, so they play inspirational music under this clip. That's why I got it. So I'm not putting this music under. Overton News is, I guess. But here's Bannon saying the deep state is winning.
If the guys around Hegseth, if there's indictments or investigations going on, and there's no indictments, there's no release of the Epstein files, and there's no investigations of Brennan and the 51, and you're not spending your time on that, but somehow gets diverted over this, it is going to be a firestorm from the MAGA base. I think people are fed up with it. I think Tom Fitton gives a lot of the frustration that in the first 100 days we've seen nothing out of that crowd. Zero. With all the hard work that went in to get him there, we've seen nothing, and now they're talking about Jack, some investigation of the guys around Hegseth. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be something over there. Maybe it is, but that's a Pete Hegseth call, right? And it shouldn't be DOJ or anybody like that jumping in there because you haven't done your primary job, which is to take down the deep state. People, we are burning daylight. These people are playing smash mouth. They're playing hardball. And the deep state is winning right now. Jack, am I wrong to say with everything President Trump's doing in the reorientation, he's one man. He's got everything on his shoulders. He needs some support. He needs some help. He needs some assistance. It's incumbent upon us to do it. But people got to get in there and put their shoulders to the wheel.
Yeah, okay. The hype music is really bizarre. So it's interesting this became a theme of today's show because Tucker was doing the same thing. That's sort of the reason that Hegseth, who's not a part of the deep state, fired his top loyalists who had been with him for a long time, but predating his time at the Pentagon. The reason he fired them for leaking was really because but it wasn't because Hegseth wants to go to war with Iran. It's because the deep state wants to go to war with Iran, but Trump doesn't want that. But the deep state's going to somehow get Trump, I guess, the commander-in-chief, to launch us into a war with Iran against his will and against Hegseth. So the defense secretary and the commander-in-chief, they're not going to be able to stop this powerful deep state from getting us into a war with Iran, even though they're literally the ones who would have to direct any strikes that would start something like that. So they can, because they're scared. They've cultivated an audience that believes you can criticize anyone and everyone except if they're Trumpy enough. They either have to be Trump or they're Trump adjacent enough, and then not them, but create for me as an audience member, because I want to think Trump is infallible and perfect, create a world where every bad thing that happens, even when he is president, is the fault of someone else. Democrats, rhinos, warmongers, deep state. Figure out a way to, if you can't, you're not going to be as popular. But if you can keep me believing that Trump's the best thing ever, and also give me an explanation for all the things I'm unhappy with that are happening under his watch. Right now, I guess it's the Epstein list or escalation with Iran. Then you can be a really popular MAGA figure. So that's a fun thing. But my question is, how long are they going to care about those sorts of discussions, right? About how some deep state's working against Trump, when matter of fact in people's lives, Trump is failing them very concretely.
The S&P has dropped the most.
By the way, if you're not subscribed, I don't know if I said that already, but please do click the subscribe button.
The S&P has dropped the most under Trump for any president at this point in their presidency since the S&P 500 was in fact created back in 1957. And indeed, it is not anywhere close, folks. It's not anywhere close. Under Trump, it's dropped, get this, 14%. The next closest one was George W. Bush back in 2001, a drop of just half that at 7%. No other elected president at this point in their presidency saw a drop of 5% or more. So Donald Trump is on a planet all by himself, a planet you do not want to be on, the American people don't want to be on, in terms of the drop in the S&P 500 approaching 15% already in his presidency. No bueno.
So all of this and the ripple effects from the trade war have a lot of people talking, of course, about a recession coming. Some even saying that we're already in a recession. Where are the numbers on that?
Yeah, okay. So, of course, this is the whole question, right? Is what happens on the New York Stock Exchange, what happens in the NASDAQ, what happens in the S&P 500, stay there? Or does it then cascade across the economy? And at this particular point, there's a decent chance that it will cascade across the economy. Chance of a recession. You see, I have 4 different little metrics we can look at. JP Morgan, 60%. Polymarket, 57%. Reuters, 45%. Goldman Sachs, 45%. That's a bunch of numbers on your screen, but they're all basically telling the same exact story. That is, on either side of 50%, there's...
So how deeply into a recession will we have to go for any of those people watching Bannon or Fitton, Fitton? How many... Big bicep fit, and how deeply would it have to go into economic pain for them to go, oh wait, maybe it's Trump's fault? I think they're going to come up with a way to blame. I saw some people speculate it's going to be Jerome Powell or Biden somehow, or fall man, maybe, make Vance the tariff czar and then Vance gets some of the backlash, or China, any of these different entities except Trump. For a lot of the MAGA folks, they'll figure out a way, even though he's the president. And back when Biden was president, even things that literally were outside of his control and weren't the product of a trade war that he launched, they would blame on him. But they find very interesting and creative ways not to blame Trump about everything. Very sad. Share your thoughts. You know where, in the comments, damn it.